In this video, I'm going to show you my process on how I mix pedal steel, but before we get started, my name is Ed, you're watching Stokes Sounds, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and leave a comment, and if you want to support the channel, head over to our website, stokessounds.com. Now let's dive in. So I've got a track here, it's by an artist called Finn Pearson, country singer, really great songwriter, guitarist, and just overall musician, and this is a song called Set Fire to the Breeze. So let's actually just take a listen to it, let's hear kind of what we're working with, and then I'm going to break down all of the plugins and all of the things that I did to process the pedal steel in this song.
Well, I ain't seen no sun since God knows when. I'll die standing up and let the good Lord wash my sins. Oh. Tell me if you really want to be the one I need. I'll be there by the dawn and we'll set fire to the breeze.
So you get the idea of the vibe. It's like a country style, kind of old school sounding kind of record, and it's got pedal steel on, and anything with pedal steel just gives that really kind of country finesse to the record. So if we just solo the pedal steel so we can kind of hear exactly what the pedal steel is doing within the track itself. If I just play a bit of the instrumental part, which has got more kind of the pedal steel. So it's a really nice sound, it's recorded great, and you can see here that I have done some volume automation, but if we actually break down kind of what it is I'm doing step by step. So first things first, I like to always kind of go with an EQ, and usually like a surgical EQ. So I listen to the raw sound and I think to myself, okay, what can I improve, or what resonant frequencies are causing problems that I don't like? Things that are problematic within the actual recording itself, I like to attack that first, because I feel like if you approach a way of attacking the things you don't like, then when you put compression on or you add reverb or whatever processing you're adding after, you're adding the processing from a sound source that you're happy with. So, you know, like when it comes down to vocals, I may DS first or EQ first, and in this case with the pedal steel, I'm going to do some EQ moves first before I do any other processing, just to clean it up. So the first kind of EQ I've got going on is the Pro Q3. I am on the Pro Q4 these days, but you know, I mixed this a few months back when it was Pro Q3, so we're on that today. But you can see here I'm just taking out around that 2K kind of mark, and that was because to me it was a little bit sharp. The recording was great, but you know, pedal steel is quite a bright instrument, and I just wanted to lower that brightness. And of course that will depend on the track. You know, every song is different, and every track, you know, it has its thing where sometimes you want something to be brighter or you want something to be a bit darker, and in this case I just felt 2K was a little bit bright. So if we solo the pedal steel in that section, and I'm just going to play the frequency that I'm taking out, and I'm reducing it by, you know, nearly 3 dB, so we're just tone shaping it. So let's have a listen. So you can hear there, it's just that resonant frequency is really kind of sharp and piercing to the ear. So, you know, make sure that your speakers weren't too loud. I mean, it's a bit late now. Now I've kind of boosted that frequency, but you know, you heard there that the frequencies are really starting to come out, and it was, you know, becoming kind of too kind of intrusive of the sound, you know, of that kind of beautiful sound of the pedal steel in itself. So, you know, I took it out at that part. And then if we go to the next part, you can see here, you know, I've got a similar EQ move. That would have been a copy and paste because, you know, same pedal steel player, same recording. It was on the same day. Everything was the same day when it was recorded, all in the same session. And so a lot of the EQ moves, you know, even though it's different parts, are still going to be exactly the same, because that frequency is still causing problems in that area depending on what he's playing and all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, I do, you know, you will see a lot of kind of copying going on between the EQs, and then you look at the third EQ and it's the same. So that is the only EQ move I did. And it's so easy to over EQ and over process instruments within a track. And I think this is, a real good demonstration here of, I didn't take out low end, I didn't take out loads of the high end, I just found the problematic frequency and just took it out, and that was all it needed. And I've got one EQ plugin on, and that's it. And then you can see here, I've got the pedal group, which is, the bus. So all of the pedal stills are all going to one aux, and that aux is then feeding the instrument bus. And so again, I've got absolutely nothing on here. But what I do have is an acoustic reverb room, and I wanted this track to sound, very organic, like a bunch of musicians in the same room, and I didn't want different kind of soundscapes within the song. I wanted it to sound like, an old school recording, but in a modern way. When you would have all the musicians in like a live studio, in like a live room feel. And so I did that with the AC acoustic kind of room reverb, which is what I've put it as, and that is sharing kind of other instruments as well. It's sharing the dobro, you got banjo, it's sharing all the same, it's all coming from the same reverb. And that reverb is, if I find it here for you in the all effects, the acoustic rooms, the LX480, and it's the acoustic instrument room, and I believe it's a preset by Joe Corral. Yes, it is. It's the room preset. I may have changed this, I don't remember now, but again, these are the settings here. This again will change from time to time depending on the track, so don't just copy these settings, but you can see it's an average size room, 1.8, so not too big, but it's just giving that kind of vibe. It's giving an atmosphere to the pedal steel. So if we solo the pedal steel group, and then I'm going to increase the acoustic room reverb, you'll hear it. So you can really hear that's adding kind of a lot of depth and a lot of space within the mix itself. And so that's why I applied that reverb. It's a very dry recording to begin with. And, I've said this before in other videos, but when something is dry, it kind of comes really close to the speakers. And I wanted the pedal steel to kind of be ambient and push back in the mix, and just to feel like there's room, feel like it's not kind of, in the way of the vocal, it's just kind of there. And, I've used volume automation, as you can see, in the instrumental, it's brought up a little bit in certain sections, the tail here, you can see I'm just bringing out the tail. That's just so it kind of sits on top of the mix. You'll notice as well in this case, at the bottom, we've got a duplicate of the pedal steel. And on certain sections, I'm doing kind of reverb throws. Finn, the artist in this, he said to me, he was like, I love the pedal steel sound, but I want to have kind of blend the transitions. So, for example, between the chorus and the instrumental, he wants the pedal steel decay to be longer. Now, there could be multiple ways of doing this, by using, a bus and then automating the bus. But in this case, what I decided to do was take the, chop the end parts off the pedal steel and then automate it in with a fader, so it kind of rises up with a reverb on 100% wet. And in this case, I used the Valhalla Vintage Verb, very, very popular reverb. I love this plugin. It's just great and always works, and I think I've got it just in the default mode. I've just taken some low end out and some high end just to kind of make it a little bit warmer and suit kind of the overall tone of the record. And then what I've done is I've just blended this in, so if we solo what that it sounds like. And then here is where it is from. So you can hear just with the room reverb, the tail isn't as long. And so when Finn, mentioned that he wanted to have a longer tail on certain parts of the track, that's when I then added them two together. You can really hear how long that tail is, the decay of that reverb, and it's blending the two transitions together between the chorus and the instrumental. So if we have a listen to that overall in the track, that sounds like this.
Tell me if you really wanna be the one I need. I'll be there by the dawn. We'll set fire to the breeze.
that makes such a difference. And I've done it here as well. If we have a listen. Sounds like a wall of sound if you have a listen with that in context.
No days are wasted when we're out on the line. I know you're homesick, I can see right through your...
It makes such a difference having these little parts, and that was a creative thing that Finn wanted, and so we did it, and that's kind of how that turned out. And then you'll see that I've also got automation on the actual bus as well in certain sections, and in this case I've just used it once. Coming out the instrumental going into verse 2, you saw there that I had that kind of reverb throw, and I bought the reverb kind of going up and then going down to like peaks and troughs, and it's kind of just giving that kind of movement. But what happened is when we put the volume down, the way that the arrangement was with the track, it meant that everything kind of got buried and ducked, and we wanted to hear that kind of fade kind of clearer within the mix. So that's why we've got like a small automation going on here, and we're lifting up. So as it's fading down with the reverb, it's lifting back up, so you're that reverb tail is staying on top of the mix. And that's in my last video I mentioned about automation, and this is where that's really important, because if I didn't make those small automation moves, the effect of having that reverb tail would kind of cut off around here, and it wouldn't be here, which is where he wanted it, because that's when the next part of that transition comes in, which is verse 2 in this case. So if you have a look, we'll play it, you will hear that the volume comes up. And you'll also notice there's a lot of noise in the recording. Now, I could have taken that out, but I actually left that on purpose because that noise is providing character. And again, that kind of goes to my point in, not everything has to be perfect, and not everything has to be kind of cleaned out and, digitally just perfect. Sometimes leaving that kind of organic, kind of raw sound can really help create the character of the song. And I think that we got that with this vibe by not overdoing it, and that is the pedal steel, a few EQ moves with some reverbs, some automation. We do actually have some panning going on the actual group bus itself, because we can create movement in the mix by panning volume, as well as kind of reverbs and that sort of thing. So you'll see there that the pedal steel is panned slightly kind of to the left. It's not perfect stereo, and the reason why I've done that is just placement for the mix. That would have been something I would have felt at the time, when I'm listening to it in context. I wanted that kind of pedal steel to be slightly off. We had the vocal center, we had the guitars left and right, the electric guitars to the right, and then I felt like I needed the pedal steel to not compete with the electric guitars and the acoustics, and kind of shift them to the left slightly. Again, very subtle moves. I didn't want to do hard pan left. I kind of done a third of the way, so it's more sitting like that in the mix. And what it that is creating is space, and it just means that it will cut through the mix before I even have to apply any processing or any kind of additional volume. Your pan and your volume are like the two fundamental basics of mixing, and you can do a lot with those. They're very, very powerful. So, I really recommend playing around with the, the spatial elements of your mix, more so than just putting plugin on after plugin. And, proofs in the pudding here. You can see a couple of EQs of reverb, and then straight out to the instrumental bus and into the mix bus. So that is kind of the pedal steel. Let's have a listen to how the pedal steel works in context, with the electric guitars. You'll hear kind of how they work together. You can hear, that pedal steel is just swimming around the guitar. The guitar is, center, and it's kind of, I wanted that pedal steel to, not be in the way and not fight it. And, a very, very small move like that just enhanced the way that the spatial kind of elements of the mix itself was working together. So let's listen now to the last chorus with the pedal steel in and the reverb tail that comes out of the pedal steel as well. So you can really hear kind of, where that's sitting in context of the mix.
Well, I ain't seen no sun since God knows on if we set fire to the breeze.
You can really hear that kind of pedal steel reverb throw. It really does make the track. So that was a really good call from Finn to kind of implement that into the mix. And you know, that's a creative kind of mixing trick to do. So definitely try that out yourself. And that's it. That's how I mixed Finn Pearson's new single Set Fire to the Breeze, and that's out now. So I'll leave a link in the description below for you guys to check out as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. And you know, if you've got any questions regarding mixing pedal steel or any other mixing related stuff, leave them in the comments below. You will also see in the description that I'm also doing one-on-one mixing consultations. So if you've got any questions and you want to go more in depth in your mixing, then definitely check that out below as well. And that's it from me this week, and I'll see you again next week for another video.